Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast that celebrates films we reckon might be underrated or underseen. I'm your host for this week, Alice Oliver. With me as always is Josh Hallam, and he chose the film this week and he went with The World Is Not Enough from 1999. So let's get to it. So then, Josh, is this a first? Is this the first James Bond film that we've done here?
It is
The World Is
indeed
Not
the
Enough?
first James Bond film. Could be the last James Bond film.
Let's see how it goes.
Depending on your reaction. But yes, it is indeed. It is indeed.
Oh, very interesting. So the film is The World Is Not Enough. It's from 1999. So spoiler warning, listeners, if you haven't seen it. So Josh, do tell. What is the film about? I mean, I can hazard a guess. It's a James Bond film. But why did you pick it? That is what I am the most interested to know.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go into the plot too much. You know, it's a Bond film. It follows the Bond formula.
There you go.
There's James Bond. There's a baddie. He does some action. He does some shagging. You know, it's it's a Bond film. That's what it's about. Why did I pick it? Okay, so this could go badly wrong for me in picking this.
Right.
For two reasons. A, you might hate it, and B, it might be quite close to my heart in such a degree that I cannot actually justify why I've picked it. But I'm going to have a go.
All right.
So we've always avoided picking big franchise films or ones that you feel like other podcasts and other media have really trodden over. And, you know, James Bond is one of them. There are lots and lots of great James Bond podcasts that probably cover this stuff in much more detail and much more eloquently than I'm going to do now. But, so, the reason I picked it, I'm a huge Bond fan. Right, It was the first franchise I got into. It holds a really, really dear place in my heart. And I've been thinking about picking up. Well, no, because we'd avoid picking franchises, it never really come into my mind to pick it. Anyway, I've been thinking about it a while, and I thought, you know what? Why not? Why not pick something like this?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, with the Bond
make the
films,
argument. If you can make the argument, then go for it.
And the thing is with the Bond films is they're not, well, with the exception of the Daniel Craig ones, there's no real through link. So you can pick any of them, and they are their own story, and that's it. So it's not like something like the Marvel films where you might have had to have seen all these films for Endgame to make sense. You know, you can watch The World Is Not Enough and having never seen any other Bond film, and you're not going to be like, what's going on? I don't get it. And so I went through the critical reception of a few Bond films knowing that I thought maybe I should pick one. And I saw that this one was either the lowest rated James Bond film or one of the lowest. Oh. And I think that's unfair. So I think it's underrated. Look, it's not underseen. It's a James Bond film. So it's not underseen. You'd be hard pushed to say it's underseen. I do think it's underrated. This is the first James Bond film I saw in the cinema.
Okay.
And like I said, it's the first franchise that I really, really got into when I was a kid through my dad. And I've seen every James Bond film ever since. It was the first time, and I probably shouldn't admit this because I might get arrested, but this is my experience, and a lot of people have had this, of having to practice your age to get into a film, because it's a 12, and I think I was 9. I think I was 9 when it came out. So my parents were doing that thing of going, and when were you born? And I'm like 19,
That's so
87 or whatever it was. So anyway, so that's what I picked it because, long and short of it is, I've picked it because I think it's underrated, but it is very, sort of close to my heart. So I'm both interested and nervous to see what you think about it. So in general, are you a Bond fan? Do you like the Bond films? Have you seen any of the Bond films?
So growing up, I think I saw a couple of the Pierce Brosnan ones, just kind of indifferent.
Probably the
them.
Welsh ones as well. Probably the Welsh ones as well.
What Welsh ones?
Timothy Dalton, he's Welsh.
What?
Yeah.
What? Oh, I didn't know. Where's he from? Find out now. If it's North Wales, he's my new hero. I had no idea. He was Welsh. Is he really Welsh?
Yeah. Timothy Dalton's
my
Welsh.
God. Where is Timothy Dalton from? Bear with me, listeners. Colwyn Bay! He's from Colwyn Bay. What the
This
fuck?
is Alice finding out live on the podcast that one of the James Bond actors is from Colwyn
crazy.
Bay.
Hey, so not only is he from Colwyn Bay, he was born in the same year as my dad. Is that? My God, they might have known each other. This is wild. So for our Welsh listeners, I'm from I'm from Denbigh, just down the road from Colwyn Bay. Oh, wow. That's amazing. I'm going to go watch all the Timothy Dalton James Bonds now. I have to.
It won't take you long.
Oh, will it?
There's only 2 of them.
Oh, that's funny. Wow, what a moment. So where was I?
You asked on James Bond.
See the Pierce Brosnan ones. Wasn't that asked? But I do find something quite interesting and entertaining about Daniel Craig as James Bond.
Yeah,
So I see Casino Royale and I quite like that. Quantum of Solace I didn't rate. Spectre I didn't rate. Skyfall I went to see in the cinema twice and I thought that was really, really good. And then I haven't seen No Time to Die yet. So I'm for the most part, kind of indifferent to James Bond. I'm not rushing to go and see it when they come out, but I completely understand that there is a huge market for it and that this is such a beloved character for so many people.
I was going to ask you who your favourite James Bond is, but I'm guessing by
Timothy
default.
Dalton, Josh. I'm going to. It's Timothy Dalton. I don't know
I've always said he has
said.
the intensity of the character from the books.
I've always said.
So are we talking your favourite one apart from Timothy Dalton? It's Daniel Craig.
It's got to be Daniel Craig, but only because I haven't seen Sean Connery, I haven't seen Roger Moore. I'm just not familiar enough with the rest of them. But I prefer Daniel Craig to Pierce Brosnan. I like Daniel Craig as an actor anyway. He's from like just outside of Cheshire, so not too far from me as well. So, I'll take that. And I went to college with his half brother. So there you go.
So
learning a little
is
bit more
your
about me.
like of the James Bond actor informed mainly by where they're from? So is it like the further away from
100%.
North Wales? So George Lazenby, who's Australian, he's knackered, isn't he? He's bottom.
Who is George? Like no one even
Welsh
knows
about
who
that?
he is.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what I mean? Hey, New South Wales in Australia, not that to touch. So that's like yes. So sort of indifferent to James Bond in general, I would say. So.
Oh God, I'm so like.
So do you want me to say what I thought?
Go on. What did you think of this one?
So,
oh God,
I thought it was okay.
Okay, all right.
I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. I definitely didn't hate it. It didn't blow me out the water.
No.
Yeah?
Oh,
if you've seen it, that's quite.
It's like submarines in it and stuff. Yeah,
and speedboats and that.
Speedboats and stuff. Yeah.
But it was all right, and it was entertaining. It was fun. It was, some great action sequences in there that I thought were really entertaining and really well put together. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I think I had sort of, I wouldn't even say low expectations. I just thought I was going to be indifferent to it, and I was kind of maybe sort of indifferent to it, but definitely enjoyed it, I guess. So go on then, Josh. What are your favourite things about this? Is Pierce Brosnan your favourite Bond?
It's so hard. I'm going to be one of those wankers now. Because I like the Bond franchise, I don't really have... They all have good and bad bits.
I love them all, he says.
Yeah, I do really like Daniel Craig. But Pierce Brosnan... It's like one of those... Pierce Brosnan was my first.
Okay, yeah, of course. That's good. It hits
Pierce
differently when it's your first.
It does. It's painful when they leave, isn't it? That's the thing.
Right.
No, he's the first one I got into. So his films, although they do wildly differ in quality, have they are close to my heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And The World Is Not Enough is one of those films. Now, this is not the best James Bond film. I wouldn't say it's the worst James Bond film, but it is very lowly rated, which is why I picked it. So, okay, what did I like about it? Well, they get a lot of the Bond elements right. You go and see a James Bond film, depending on your different expectations. One of the problems that people have with the Daniel Craig ones is that people say they take themselves too seriously. They're not they've not got that cheekiness. They've not got the wink and the nod. They've not got the daft puns. They've not got the gadgets. They've not got all that stuff, which is also what a lot of people really, really like about the Daniel Craig one. So it just depends what you like, what you're looking for. I think this gets the balance pretty right between what people want and what people don't want. So, you've got great suits, locations, action, glamour, gadgets, all the things that you expect. So it does have that thing. It has that little cheeky wink and a nod to the audience, the way it doesn't take itself too seriously. Lots of, very sort of stupid puns in there, some better than others, some teeter on the, really bad, which I'm sure we'll come on to. I think this film's pretty well paced. It's more or less bang on 2 hours. It doesn't feel, it doesn't drag, from the opening to the finish. I think it's pretty well paced. It's a good action film. It opens with, other than I think No Time to Die, so if you don't know the Bond films, they always start usually with an opening sequence that ends with the song. That goes into the song where you've got loads of, usually it's a sort of visual, almost like, I don't really know what you'd call it, but it's almost
like concept art from the story, isn't it? Because in this one, I think I saw, there's like animations of like not oil rigs, but there's things that, like mechanical things.
Yeah,
that
the old-timey oil diggers.
So
it's, like you say, it's like concept art set to music to sort of make a little music video where you get all the cast. And that's one thing you expect from a Bond film, and and you get that. So in this, as I was saying, it's quite a long one where you actually get 2 action sequences, not just one. You get him in Bilbao in the banker's office, and then there's a boat chase,
speedboat chase on the River Thames.
And I think the action's really good. Again, that's what makes a good Bond film: great action. But then you also get those little things, those little moments, Bond moments, if you will. So like in this one, he goes underwater in the speedboat and he adjusts his tie. And it's just like, it's those little moments where it's like, it makes you go, he's the guy everyone wants to be. He is what Austin Powers is. Men want to be him, women want to be with him. He's that sort of thing. And those little moments are really cool. And lots and lots of other films have taken what James Bond's done and improved it, changed it, and then that's then fed right back into what James Bond has been. So, for example, the Daniel Craig Bond films are pretty influenced by the Jason Bourne films. But without Bourne, without Bond, you don't get Jason Bourne in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So there's always people who will poke fun at Bond and say things like, well, the Daniel Craig one's just ripped off Jason Bourne. It's like, yeah, but if James Bond didn't exist, you wouldn't have Jason Bourne. Or a lot of people say things like
Jason Bourne, James Bond, like they've not exactly been subtle there, have they?
Or you'll get people who say, the Mission Impossible films now are doing what the James Bond films used to do, but they're actually doing them better. Again, there's an argument to be said for that. Not Rogue Nation, Fallout, the last Mission Impossible film, was for me, one of the best action films of the last few years. But without James Bond, that wouldn't be there, or it certainly wouldn't be what it is. So I think it's got those really good Bond moments in it that make it feel like a Bond film, an action film that's glamorous and doesn't take itself too seriously. I think that it's pretty well directed. I think you can enjoy this as a standalone film. Like I said, a lot of the Bond films before the Daniel Craig ones, they're not linked together. So until Daniel Craig, as far as I know, you get ones which might have the odd character that carries over. So like Felix Leiter, who is Jeffrey Wright in the Daniel Craig Bond films, or he's been other actors, is an FBI or CIA agent who is James Bond's friend, and he appears in multiple films, and he's been played by different actors. So he's in different ones, but it never really references other stuff. So it's one of them. He does have, for example, girlfriends who are in multiple films. If James Bond can have a girlfriend, so that sort of thing. So I thought that it was a great standalone. I think that you could enjoy this as a standalone action film outside of James Bond. I thought it had so David Arnold does the music for this, and he has done for a lot of the Bond films. I think he might have done all of the Pierce Brosnan ones. I think there's a great score in there. What they tend to do with James Bond films, and I don't really know how they figure it out, but the score informs the song, and the song informs the score, so that you quite often get one repetitive piece of music that you hear a lot throughout it. And that, I think, really works in this one. That sort of which they use of The World Is Not Enough, which is the garbage song. It's not my favourite James Bond song. It's not up there in the top James Bond songs, but it works as a James Bond song. It has everything you expect. So I think it's good. Good supporting cast in there as well. Of course, the late great Robbie Coltrane is in there as Zukovsky. Judi Dench is M. A couple of other people. Goldie is in there for some reason. I'll tell you one thing as well. It had a great game that went with it. A lot of people think that GoldenEye is the peak of James Bond games. I like GoldenEye, but I like a lot of the James Bond films. I'm one of those people that I just like them because they're James Bond. So for me, I just liked it for all the reasons that I like James Bond, really. What about you? So what did you like about it? I'd be interested to know what you specifically liked, or if really you were just a bit lukewarm on it.
So, I mean, some of the things that you have mentioned there. So, that opening sequence where they're doing the speedboat chase down the Thames, that is brilliant. Like, it's exciting. Like, it's adrenaline pinching sort of thing. And because they're going down the Thames, so you've got like these brilliant aerial and wide shots of London. It all looks so impressive. The way they're maneuvering the boats is so impressive. And this is a common theme throughout. And I assume, and you'll be better placed to comment on this than me, but it seems to be like they're just really professional, slick, and tight stunts.
Oh yeah,
like the stunts are so like some of the best you're ever gonna see.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Like it all feels really real. Like it doesn't feel like a film that would be enhanced by CGI. Like it feels like that the power from it is from the fact that they're actually on the Thames and they're actually driving these boats. Obviously, it's not Piers Brosnan doing it.
What?
But you know, yeah, shocker. And then as you're getting this sequence, like you said, you get these really sort of funny kind of nod to the camera moments. And I didn't fully expect it. And I suppose if that is because I'm most familiar with Daniel Craig as James Bond and he doesn't do this as much. But like the thing where he goes underwater in the boat and he fixes his tie and almost looks at the camera to say, well, I've still got to look sexy even though I'm underwater. And then a little bit later, he speeds past a couple of police officers and sprays them with the river water. And this was pretty funny. And this just kept happening, especially more so in the first half. Obviously, as it ramps up, it gets a little bit more serious towards the end. But whenever you've got these big action sequences, there's all these jokes going on inside as well, and I just wasn't expecting it. The skiing action sequence as well was another one that really stands out for me. Again, it's really visually impressive, not just because of what the stunt performers are having to do and the equipment and all that, but just the mountain range, the snow, all of that looks fantastic. The stunts are brilliant. The practical effects are brilliant. And there's so many explosions.
Yeah.
Like so many explosions, and they look great. And then at the very end, you get a submarine explode, and that's just fucking cool, isn't it?
Who doesn't want to see that?
How often do you see a submarine explode? And I think some of Piers Brosnan's performance and delivery was pretty entertaining. So there's a moment where he's shown an X-ray of his injuries. This is towards the beginning. And basically he's told that he doesn't have a clean bill of health. And he just grabs the X-ray out of the doctor's hands and throws it away as if to be like, don't give me your facts. I just need you to tell me that I'm fine and that I can keep working. And I thought that was quite funny and just a funny little thing about his character. And just in general, like I said, I didn't realize how many quips and how many puns were going to be in this. And it's almost like within the film, James Bond isn't a real person and he's just being this character all the time, which of course would make sense because he is a spy. And it's like, well, is his name even really James Bond? So I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if that is the sort of thing that the film was going for or if it is just indicative of the type of person James Bond is. But it feels like, for me, it was like, he uses that to keep up
it's
a wall. Yeah, it's to keep up this barrier. He's like, well, I always have to be on. I always have to be acting because I'm a spy. Like, people can't know who I am. They can't know the real me sort of thing. So I kind of thought that maybe it was a bit about that. I don't know if it is. I don't know if that's what they were going for or if he is just super into his dad jokes and his puns. But it just means that you never really get to know him as a person, do you? Because he's always got this front up. But that does make sense given that he is a secret agent.
Yeah, and that goes through a lot of the other films. So a lot of people say a lot of people like Roger Moore because his was a little bit camper, a little bit more funny, lots more puns and that sort of thing. Sean Connery.
Even more
Roger Moore's
puns
film,
than Piers Brosnan.
There are some of the Roger Moore films that are basically almost carry-on films in the amount of their puns.
Really? I didn't realise that this is what they were all about.
Yeah, and a lot of people likes them, and that's one of the things I like about James Bond is they change with the times, they change with the actor. You know, Sean Connery's a lot more serious, but even he has more comic moments. Roger Moore, a lot more comic moments than Timothy Dalton. He took it right back to being serious, Welsh,
Go on, Tim.
And then Pierce Brosnan sort of balances it with a little bit more comedy than Timothy Dalton. Then Daniel Craig comes in and he is widely considered to have made James Bond like a person rather than a symbol,
a character
or character or whatever.
Yeah.
But even then there is a wink and a nod to him. You know what I mean? He's not entirely serious. He is more serious. But so one of the things I liked about that is you can watch James Bond films and have an entirely different experience depending on what you like. You know, a lot of people really, really like what Daniel Craig did. A lot of people don't really like what Daniel Craig is. for me, you can enjoy the Pierce Brosnan films and the Daniel Craig films. They all bring different things to the role, and that's what I like about it. That's one of the things I like about Pierce Brosnan is I think he gets the balance quite right between serious and not serious. And I do think he's good in this because it's easy to forget that behind the James Bond character and the suits and the sexiness and the glamour and the locations and the action, there is an actor, there is a performance to be given.
Absolutely.
And you never, for me, I'm never watching him going, well, I don't buy him as a, do you know what I mean? You just, I think he's always engaging.
So we'll move on now then to talking about anything that we didn't like about the film, or perhaps anything that we would change. So Josh, you've said it's very dear to your heart, but I know you're very good at bringing a balanced argument to the table. So tell me, was there anything that you disliked about this film?
It was tough, this, because it's not the best Bond film. It isn't regarded as the best Bond film. Like I say, I have, it's dear to my heart because it was the first one I saw. So it was difficult for me. It felt like a little bit like I was pissing on my childhood, trying to go through it. But the main criticism widely of this, and I'll see what you think about it when I say it, is that Denise Richards' character is often considered to be one of the worst, in inverted commas, Bond girls. And I don't think her performance is bad. I think the problem is that she's entirely underdeveloped as a character. So apart from some throwaway dialogue about how I think she's meant to be a Bond girl that's like, but she's a scientist and she's not bothered. You know, she's work focused. She's not bothered what men think of her, and it annoys her that her looks get in the way of her job. I think that's what it's meant to be. But it doesn't really come across because they don't give her enough time to develop as a character, and that's it. She's just not given much to do. Before you know it, there's a few lines of dialogue and she's a damsel in distress. So I think that's one of the criticisms. And then the wider script, there are some issues with the dialogue. You know, some of the puns are a little bit like, oh, for God's sake, like they're not.
Here we go again. Yeah.
You know, I remember, so there's the famous joke in this is that she is called Christmas Jones. And at the end, well, guess what happens? It's a James Bond film. And he says, I thought Christmas only comes once a year, right? And everyone in the cinema laughed. And like 9-year-old me went to my dad, what does that mean? In like a packed cinema. And my dad went, I'll tell you when you're older.
Yeah, there you
go. And I still don't know what it means. So anyway, so that, you know, there are puns and then there are, no, it's just a bit gross, that really. So there's that. There's a little bit of sort of dialogue and things happening that need to happen. So, for example, this was at the stage where they were trying to come up with more and more gadgets, right? And there's all the famous gadgets that everyone knows, the Aston Martin DB5 and the little helicopter he has and other stuff, exploding pen and Goldeneye, all that. But this got to the point where it was almost like they were coming up with gadgets and then writing the story around it. So what happens in this is, miraculously, he has a snow jacket that turns into saving you from an avalanche.
Yeah, exactly. That's, you know.
Guess what happens? There's an avalanche. So it's a little bit like you just know what's coming. So there's a little bit with that. There's a little issues with the dialogue. At one point, so the inciting incident is that an oil baron is killed. And it's who killed him, and James Bond's going after him, and it turns out it was his daughter who sort of hated him and all this other stuff. Anyway, he is an oil baron. He's the head of this massive multinational conglomerate company. And someone, as they're doing the briefing, says, "We know it was someone close to him, but given the size of his organization, it could be anyone, anywhere." What? So it could be someone close to him, so we know it was someone close to him. But given the size of his organization, so is it someone close to him or is it someone who's anywhere? So I'd probably say there are some issues with the dialogue and there's some issues with this plot that it's a little bit contrived. You could probably say that the use of the female characters isn't great, although the villain is a female and she is pretty good in it, I'd say. So I don't know. I am stretching a little bit because I do like the film so much, but there's definitely issues with the plot and the script. One of the criticisms seems to be that the plot isn't good enough. I don't think it's the plot that's not good enough. I think there's just little elements that could have used with some improvement. But that's pretty much it from me. What about you?
So one just sort of really broad really broad point here, but essentially, I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care about the story, and I thought the script was a bit cheesy and insincere. So sometimes I was a little bit unclear as to what was going on and what people's motivations were. I felt like some characters and some plot points were quite shoehorned in there, and it just didn't feel authentic in any way. However, I have always assumed that that is the point of James Bond films. So, like, it's fantasy fulfillment, basically, for men, isn't it? It's a good-looking guy in a suit who's very important, very strong, very athletic, and he gets all the hot babes and drives fast cars. And that's fine, and it's not too dissimilar to what most superhero films are today. It's just about someone who looks cool doing cool stuff. And that's fine. And I appreciate that there is a place for that. But it just meant that I didn't feel attached to anything that was going on. Like, I didn't feel attached to the characters. I didn't feel attached to the story. You know, like when we did You've Got Mail, like I felt an attachment to those people and to the story. And I just didn't feel that for this. And so that's obviously, it's not like it's a major thing. It just means I wasn't invested in it. It means that I was a little bit distracted even as I was watching it. So I was watching it with Ollie, and I found that we were every now and then having a conversation about something that wasn't the film.
Yeah.
And that's not typical. Like if we watch a film for the podcast and if he chooses to watch it with me, it's like, well, we're watching the film. If you want to talk to me, you can talk to me about the film, because he's quite good. He'll sit there and start like looking at trivia and stuff and start telling me interesting things whilst I'm watching.
Is he bothered on James Bond?
I don't think he is really.
No.
I don't think he's never really mentioned it. Like, he hadn't seen this. I don't think he's too bothered really. He's more into fantasy.
Yeah.
Like, that's his sort of... Yes, this is what he said to me yesterday. He said, I don't want to be a secret agent. I want to be a wizard. So he obviously prefers fantasy films.
Everyone's got their own thing, haven't they? Like,
Exactly.
Obviously, I like James Bond as a franchise, but I also like other stuff. Like Star Wars and the Marvel films and any comic book film and Harry Potter. You know, all the things. A lot of them are about escapism. It's just this escapism is a little bit more based in a way in reality than, say, you know, Marvel or Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or whatever. So I know what you mean there, to be honest with you. I think it's probably a case of James Bond being a victim of its own formula, which is you probably can't engage because for a lot of the time there's no jeopardy because you know he's going to get the girl and save the world. It's just, for me, that formula is a comfortable old blanket and I like it.
For sure.
But I can absolutely get you'd be watching it going, well, I can't engage with it. I think one of the reasons Daniel Craig was so successful is because he did, in a way, engage people. He made him feel more like a bloke. Not like a bloke, more like a real person. It's like in Casino Royale. You've seen Casino Royale, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
So like when Vesper dies, you feel like he is losing the love of his life, right? But there's plenty of other Bond films where a Bond girl dies. And there's just a bit of like you know, she shouldn't have lost her head. You know, there's always jokes. But in that one, you know, it feels like a person losing someone that he was close to. So I completely get that because it's so formulaic, it's almost not designed for you to engage with it.
And I think, and that's the difficult thing. And it's like, because so much, and I was trying to, I think this is why I didn't let it bother me that much. And even some of the, you know, maybe some of the attitudes and some of the treatment of certain characters and all this, I kind of just forgive it all because you go into it and it's like, well, this is a James Bond film. I know what it is. You know what you're going to get. Yeah. If you're looking for something else, if you're looking for deep feminist like issues to be explored and, you know, and all that isn't what this is going to be. So you go into it and you know that, and I knew that. So oh God, what am I looking for? I managed my expectations, shall we say. So all those things didn't bother me. Yeah. But just ultimately, I didn't connect to it in any way. It just looked kind of cool. And sometimes that's enough. But for me, this world wasn't enough. Oh, there we go. There we go. She's sharp, this one. We'll move on now then to talking about the critical reception and determine if it is underrated.
Decision
time.
I
haven't seen this. So
what would you give it?
I'd give it like a low 6, probably.
Okay.
But in terms of what I think it got, well, you're saying when you say it's low and that you think it's underrated, that makes me think that it's underrated for a Bond film and not necessarily in the grand scheme of all films. So when you say this is underrated, I reckon you're probably, I think maybe mid to high 6.
Mid to high 6.
So I'm going to say 6.6 or a 66%.
And what did you say? What did you say you give it?
Like a low 6.
A
So just
low
a little
6.
bit lower than that. Maybe 6.3, 6.4.
Okay. So, at the time of recording on IMDb, it gets 6.4 out of 10.
Oh, there we are.
On Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 51% and the audience give it 49%.
Oh, crikey.
Which works out about 54% on average, or 5.5 out of 10. So, that's why I picked it.
It's underrated. Josh, it is underrated. I thought you were full of it. I thought you were full of shit. I was like, this Bond film didn't get 7.8, therefore it's underrated. That's what I thought this was going to be.
It's not the best Bond film. It is fairly formulaic, but it's not 5.5 bad.
Nope, I completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. And I wonder if some of those low ratings come from the high expectations of it, because it's like, oh, it's a Bond film.
It's a Bond film.
It's got to be good. It's got to be amazing. And it's not good. And it's not that it's not good. Sorry, it's not amazing, but it's not 50. What was that? 55?
54, I think I said.
54, 55
on average.
That's
and 49,
low, isn't it?
49% was what was that? The critics. That's low,
harsh,
isn't it? Do you know what I
That
mean?
is harsh.
Are we saying underrated then?
I definitely reckon it's underrated.
Well, there we go. The World Is Not Enough is our first James Bond film, and it is underrated. Alice, I'm made up with that. I might even pick another one.
I think you should do.
I might make you watch Octopussy.
Okay.
Which, believe it or not, is a real James Bond film and not a porn.
I think I've definitely heard of that one, yeah. But yeah, do it, man. I'm intrigued for sure.
And what if I just pick all of them and then eventually you'll have to have seen them all?
If you can make a case for each of them being underrated, I'll listen to you.
Maybe I'll pick one a year, and then in 25 years we'll have done them all. But if it takes us 25 years, they'll have made fucking
25 more
10 more or something. So anyway, World Is Not Enough is underrated. We'll be back next week with another episode to be announced, so we look forward to you coming back and joining us for that one. If you'd like to get in touch with us in the meantime, the email address is filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That, you'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. We're always putting stuff out there, so hopefully we'd like to hear from you. Engage with us, listen to us. Thank you very much for listening. We do very much appreciate it. We are on Patreon as well, so if you're looking for extra content, bonus stuff, episodes a day early, head on over and look for us on Patreon and you'll find us. A couple of tiers there. Hopefully it's well worth your time and your money, but any support is of course massively appreciated. We're also on the television, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. We are on the local TV network every Friday from 6 p.m. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. That is every Friday evening from 6 p.m. Me and Josh talking about all our favourite underrated and underseen films.
Yes, lots of ways to hear us, see us, and thank you very much as ever for listening and supporting us. It really does mean a lot. Until next week, it's goodbye from me. Cheerio!
Bye!